Haunted visits at 3 a.m. exposed sinister secrets of cursed places and spine-chilling encounters. Ella's heart raced as she wiped the table for the last time that night at the diner. The clock struck 3, the hour when the world turned sinister. Her tired eyes flicked to her phone, and dread pooled in her stomach. The calls had started about a week ago, unknown numbers that broke the silence of her nightly drives home. After the first 3, she figured they were pranksters or perhaps a wrong number. But now, with each insistent ring, they felt more like a dark warning, echoing through her mind. When she got home, Ben was asleep, but Ella couldn't shake the feeling. Shadows danced behind closed curtains. That immediate chill crawled across her shoulders. She felt like something was watching from the dark corners of her yard. The comforting familiarity of her quiet suburban home was fracturing, turning into a haunting place of hidden fears and lurking terror. When Ben told her about the shadowy figure, panic twisted her insides. "It's just a figment of your imagination," she whispered, keeping her voice steady. But he squeezed his crayons tighter, muttering about the dark man who came out at night. Parental instinct kicked in. The late-night drive became a ritual of dread, each minute stretching like hours. The unsettling noises around her, scratching sounds on the windows, unsettling rustling behind the bushes became sharp reminders that danger was near. One cool evening, the fear bubbled over. Ella flipped on the lights in the backyard, intending to confront whatever was wrong. "I'll show you there's nothing," she declared, trying to convince herself. Stepping into the crisp air felt like stepping onto a stage, and fear danced in her stomach as the garden's familiar shapes morphed into menacing figures. She strained to listen, her body tense and primed for flight. Then she heard it, a distinct scuttling sound coming from the edge of her property. "Enough is enough," she breathed, edging to the source. As she rounded the corner of the house, she saw a path snaking through the shrubbery, leading into the darkness. On impulse, she took a step forward, drawn into the unknown. The trees rustled, as if whispering secrets of the past. Tales of the abandoned Franklin Elementary School loomed in her memory. Rumors of ghosts, of the caretaker, swirled like autumn leaves in her mind, each one brushing against her heart. This school, they said, still held the echoes of sorrow. Ella could practically hear the laughter of children that once filled its halls, now turned to wails of despair. "You shouldn't have come here, Ella," she murmured to herself, but curiosity pulled her farther down the path, leading her toward the creaking gate. In the darkness beyond, fear gripped her as she pushed the gate open, its rusty hinges groaning like the wounded cries of those who suffered there. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, breaking the spell. A message from an unknown number: "They're not alone anymore." A chill shot through her spine as she realized just how deep the shadows could reach. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As the oppressive silence enveloped her, Ella's heart pounded louder, drowning out her thoughts. She felt a presence lurking in the fog of memories, and the whispers from the school grew deafening. Just as she prepared to turn back, a low voice echoed from the darkness. "The shadows have been waiting." Her breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen, realizing she had stumbled into the heart of something she couldn't understand. Something dangerous. Her child's safety hung in the balance, but would she live to save him, or would the darkness consume them both? Ella's instincts screamed at her to flee, but her feet felt glued to the ground. The voice, cold and gravelly, seemed to resonate around her, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace of dread. She glanced back toward the path, heart racing. Her mind fought against the temptation to run, her thoughts swirling like a violently disturbed storm. The thought of Ben alone at home tormented her. What if he woke up and she wasn't there? The darkness shimmered, and she could see shapes moving within it. They slithered and twisted, forming indistinct bodies that hovered just beyond her vision. "They're here," the voice whispered again, each word sending tendrils of ice through her veins. "Who?" Ella managed to whisper, her voice barely above a breath. The shadows grew restless, flickering like a candle on the verge of extinguishing. "The ones that watch," it echoed, sending a shudder down her spine. With one shaky breath, she backed away, feeling her heart hammer against her ribcage, as if trying to escape. The urge to retreat was overwhelming, but curiosity chained her feet to the earth, yearning for the answers that felt just beyond the veil of night. What had happened at Franklin Elementary? She hesitated. Suddenly, a scream, distant yet piercing, slashed through the night. It was a child's scream, the very kind that gripped her soul with terror. Ben. She stumbled back toward the school gate, every nerve ending on fire. The air felt thick, almost viscous, as if the darkness itself was trying to pull her down into its depths. In a swift motion, she turned back to the school, the chilly tang of fear filling her lungs. Was this school not merely abandoned? Was it a sanctuary for something monstrous? Out of sheer survival, she stepped inside the gate. With each step into the yard, Ella could see the derelict structure looming before her. Vines snaked around the walls like skeletal fingers closing in. The windows were shattered, black holes peering into the void where laughter once echoed. A gust of wind howled through, the sound mimicking the wails of lost children, hollow, sad, unending. Pushing the front door open, it creaked like an ancient creature waking from a long slumber. Dust motes hung in the air, swirling like disoriented spirits. She stepped inside, the oppressive silence heavy around her. As she moved deeper, the wooden floor protested underfoot, groaning with each step, as if warning her to turn back. Then, a flicker of movement caught her eye, darting past the corner. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, a primal response to an unseen predator. Ben! She called out, voice breaking with desperation. The echoes of her words faded into the shadows as dread pooled in her stomach. Suddenly, the walls trembled as if something was trying to break free from within. The air turned cold, piercing through Ella's coat, chilling her bones. Help them, the voice intoned again, much closer this time. She could feel the heat of breath brushing against her ear, icy and sinister. In that moment, Ella realized that she was not alone. From the shadowy corner, a figure stepped forward, tall, ragged, eyes glowing with a predatory gleam. Panic surged through her, but the sight of it stripped her of fear for a split second. It looked human, yet grotesquely wrong. Time is running out, Ella, it rasped, reaching a gnarled hand toward her. The breath hitched in her throat, and instinctively Ella's body jerked back. She instinctively turned to flee, but the shadow shifted, closing in around her. In desperation, she dashed to the door, but it slammed shut, trapping her inside. The figure laughed, a low, haunting sound that echoed like chimes of doom. Ella's world darkened as the figures began to close in, whispering her name in a chorus. She realized now she had been lured here, to face the inevitable truth. What would happen if she didn't escape? What awaited if she lingered in this hellish place? And then, through the cacophony, one final message broke through the smile of whatever held her captive. They are now yours. The ground trembled as the shadows surrounded her, threatening to engulf her whole. The laughter echoed, growing more malevolent with each breath. Ella's heart raced faster, each beat a drumroll for impending doom. The shadows pulsed, breathing, alive, as they inched closer, wrapping around her like suffocating vines. No! She shouted, her voice cracking. Desperation clawed at her throat, fighting for freedom. She turned, scanning the room for any escape. The darkness smothered the corners, lurking just outside her field of vision, but a glimmer of light flickered from a shattered window. With a surge of adrenaline, she bolted towards it. The air thickened as she pushed through the darkness and reached for the broken frame, but hands clawed at her from every side, dragging her back, pulling her into their depths. The grotesque figure loomed closer, its eyes glowing brighter now, reflecting her own terror back at her. Help them, Ella, it hissed, the words like poison twisted through her veins. They are lost. Who? Who are you talking about? She screamed, heart pounding as she struggled against the grasping shadows. They are the ones who cannot leave. The figure's smile widened, twisted, sudden clarity struck her in that moment. The voices, the cries, the shadows, they were all remnants of lost souls, children taken by whatever cursed this place. Their cries melded into a haunting chant, echoing through her mind as urgency surged. Ben! She called out again, a wild plea engulfed by the dark. What if he was already trapped within this nightmare? The shadows began to wail, shifting around her. They didn't just want her, they needed her. As the figure reached for her again, Ella grappled with a decision: to help the lost children or to protect herself and flee. The thought cut through her like ice. "I can't leave them!" she screamed, the fight igniting within her. Ella twisted her body, breaking free just enough to slip through the shadowy grasp. She lunged toward the figure, fueled by a desperate need to know more. "What do you want?" she demanded, gripping the hem of its tattered coat. "What do these children need?" "To live again, Ella," it whispered. "Join them in our eternal night." With that, it yanked her closer, and a searing pain shot through her chest as if chains forged from shadow latched onto her heart. Images flashed before her: faces of children, eyes wide with fear and sorrow, fading into oblivion. She staggered back, breath hitching, reality splintering as despair flowed through her like sickening poison. "No!" she cried, a plea more than a threat. The shadows recoiled, momentarily disoriented. Ella seized the moment. She rushed toward the door, pounding against it, screams falling silent in the oppressive dark. It rattled violently as she threw herself against it, desperate, unwilling to succumb to their haunting call. Just as she thought she might break free, a chorus of voices erupted, rising above the hush like thunder. "You cannot escape the darkness, Ella. Your fate is intertwined with ours." With a final push, she forced the door wide and stumbled outside. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp, and she gasped, reeling from the shock. But before she could find her bearings, the ground beneath her feet shifted. The laughter returned, mingling with the shouts of the children, echoing in her mind a cacophony of the lost. "Where will you run now?" taunted the figure, appearing in the doorway, silhouetted against the eerie glow of the moon. Turning back toward the school, a deeper shadow gathered around the entrance, coiling like smoke, ever watchful. The malevolent eyes bore down on her. "You know the truth, Ella. Help them or we will come for Ben." The words sliced through her, paralyzing her heart. There would be no free passage. Fear took root in her chest again, and she realized that fleeing might not be an option anymore. What had she unleashed by entering that cursed school? As she stood there, caught between escape and the truth that beckoned her back, Ella knew one thing: Ben's life depended on her next move. But how long would the darkness let her hesitate? The ground trembled again, shadows swirling with renewed energy. "Time is ticking," the figure crooned, its smile sharper than ever. What kind of choice was ahead? And at what cost? The darkness whispered back, beckoning her to choose before it swallowed them all whole. Ella staggered, breathless, her mind racing. The laughter faded slightly, but the weight of chilling eyes remained heavy on her. How could she save Ben when all her instincts screamed for her to run? Yet standing still meant giving in to the shadow's demands. "Help us," the echoes begged from the abyss. Those soft cries morphed into an agonizing chant, a haunting melody that wrapped around her bones, pulling her in like a siren's call. She shut her eyes, clutching her head, desperate to block out the terrible truth. She took a deep breath, rallying her wavering courage. Maybe, if she could find Ben, they could escape together. But the thought of the children, their lost faces, gnawed at her spirit. She swallowed her fear. She had to confront the shadows, not run from them. "Let him go!" she shouted into the darkness, aiming her voice towards the looming figure that still watched her with glee. It merely tilted its head, smile wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth glistening in the moonlight. "We can't do that, Ella." "He is already ours." A cold wave swept through her, and she twisted to look at the school again, its windows like black eyes staring into her soul. Nightmarish visions flickered in her mind, each child she had glimpsed smothered in tears and whispers, forever trapped. "I won't let you take anyone else." Rage ignited within her, pumping fiercely through her veins. She stepped back, gazing at the consuming darkness. "I will find a way to set you all free." The laughter shifted, morphing into shrieks of disbelief. The shadows writhed and curled like snakes, angry at her defiance. The ground under her shook again, and the looming figure regained its laughter, dark and taunting. "Foolish girl," it sneered. "You think you can defy the very essence of despair? Choose, Ella. Will you join them in their agony? Or stand alone against the darkness?" Without warning, a piercing scream split the night, a sound so visceral, so heartbreaking, it froze her blood. It came from inside the school, piercing through the veil of shadows. Ben! Her resolve solidified as a new surge of adrenaline coursed through her, and she sprinted towards the entrance, courage drowning out her fear. The shadows reached for her desperately, clawing and grasping with frantic hands. Don T. Ella yelled, pushing through. The door shuttered behind her as she stumbled inside, breathless and soaked in urgency. The interior was darker than before, the air thick with palpable despair. The ghostly wails of children surrounded her, swirling like a storm, echoing off the walls. "Where are you?" she shouted, voice trembling but determined. A flicker of light caught her eye, a faint glow at the end of a long corridor. It beckoned, whispering promises of hope against the silent cries around her. With each step she took, the shadows tightened their grip, curling around her ankles, tugging at her clothes. The oppressive darkness thickened, almost suffocating. As she approached, the light revealed itself to be a classroom, door ajar. Inside, she glimpsed silhouette shadows moving against the glow, frantic dances of desperation. "Ben!" she gasped, heart racing. The teacher's desk stood empty, yet she felt the weight of a presence inside. Cold and stale. A quick glance over her shoulder confirmed the figure had followed her in, looming ominously at the threshold. "Make a choice, Ella," it called, voice dripping with malice. The wails grew louder, clashing with Ella's heartbeat. "What do you want from me?" she screamed, a hint of panic lacing her words. Join them, or lose him. Torn between the anguished cries and the very real threat before her, Ella's breath hitched. There was no way out without taking a leap into the unknown. With a last glance at the dark figure poised to seize her, she took a deep breath, and stepped into the glowing classroom. A loud bang echoed behind her as the door slammed shut, sealing her in with the shadows of the lost. What would they reveal? And how far would she have to go to uncover the truth? The moment Ella crossed the threshold, the air felt thicker, pressing against her as if it had a life of its own. The classroom was far from empty, countless voices surrounded her, each a whisper of despair. Despair cloaked like a shroud, it wrapped around her, squeezing tight. "Ben!" she cried out, her voice swallowed by the cacophony of sorrow. She squinted against the low light, searching desperately for him. Each shadow danced around the room, intentionally moving, beckoning her deeper into the gloom. They were alive, feeding on her fear. The glow came from a solitary old lamp on a battered desk, flickering weakly. A lineup of tiny chairs faced it, each one occupied by a figure indistinguishable in the gloom. Were they children? The shape of their bodies twisted, barely resembling anything that once had a life. As she stepped closer, voices stirred beneath the surface, melodic and sorrowful. "Join us," they sang, their tones dripping with sadness. "Stay forever." She forced herself to breathe, to focus. "Ben! Where are you?" Her heart thundered in her chest. Each beat echoed in the silence, drowning out their haunting invitation. A flash of movement caught her eye. One chair wobbled, a shadowy figure rising. It appeared small, frail. Was it Ben? She stumbled forward, desperation clouding her judgment. Ella, a quiet, familiar voice broke through the din, fragile as the dim light. "Ben!" She rushed toward the source, cascading dread tumbling in her stomach. Her fingers grazed past the nearby shadows, cold and clammy like frostbitten fingers. When she reached the desk, her heart sank. The figure wasn't her brother. Instead, a child, no older than 8, stared up at her with hollow eyes. His mouth moved, forming a soundless plea for release. "Where has Ben?" she implored, shaking with fear. But the shadows closing in didn't answer. They grasped at her legs, their whispers growing louder, breathing heavily at her neck. The classroom warped, pushed outward by their contempt, and the distance to the door stretched impossibly far. "Leave him alone." The shadows recoiled momentarily, releasing their grasp just enough for her to back away. But then the lights dimmed further, the lone lamp sputtering and flickering as if it were about to die. Instinctively, Ella swung toward the door, but it was gone, vanishing into a wall of darkness. "Join us, Ella," the child whispered again, now joined by many other voices, layering over one another, creating an orchestra of despair. "We are all that remains." Panic surged. She whirled around, blood racing through her veins. Shapes emerged from the darkness, reaching with tiny, grotesque hands. They were the children, the lost souls trapped inside this forsaken place. "Help us," they echoed, stretching their arms toward her, fingers scraping on air, desperate to pull her in. She stumbled backward, her heart pounding, resisting their call. "I want to join you." But the shadows laughed, filling the room with a chilling mirth. "You are already a part of us." She could feel the coldness creeping into her soul, an icy claw gripping her heart. Desperation wrapped around her throat as she clawed at the air, gasping for breath. "Ben!" she called, voice breaking, tears flooding her eyes. "I'm coming for you." Just then, a loud crash echoed outside the classroom, startling her. The shadows froze, their attention diverted. The window rattled violently as an explosion of light smashed through, lighting up the room. Then, against the sudden brilliance, Ella caught a glimpse of him, Ben, hunched behind one of the twisted shadows. His eyes wide in fear. "Ella!" he shouted, voice breaking, "help me!" Time froze. The shadows recoiled, hissing like a viper disturbed. "Don't take him!" she howled, but a massive darkness surged forward. The bright light flickered and vanished. There was no escape without sacrifice. Her heart weighed heavy as she made her choice, every instinct screaming at her to run. But could she really leave him? Would she become one of the lost in this wretched nightmare? The answer lurked in the darkness. And it was hungry. What would she be willing to do to save him? Would she pay the ultimate price? The darkness swallowed her whole as the light flickered and finally died, plunging Ella into a pit of blackness. Horror gripped her heart. She could still hear Ben's terrified voice, a lifeline lost in the void, tugging at her with desperate urgency. "Ella! Ben!" she shouted into the oppressive silence that answered her. Each breath felt heavier, laden with cold dread. The weight of the shadows pressed against her, clawing at her sanity as she fought against their suffocating grasp. A flicker caught her attention, a glimpse of movement off to her right. Ella turned, eyes straining against the blackness, and felt something brush past her cheek, chilling, electric. She recoiled and stumbled backward, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it might burst. "Stay with us," a choral whisper edged into her consciousness, suffused with a twisted sense of longing. It felt like fingers wrapping around her mind, trying to pull her into the abyss. "No!" she gasped, shaking her head violently. She had to find Ben. She stumbled forward, moving blindly, seeking any shape or form that could lead her out of this nightmare. Suddenly, she bumped against a desk, the wood splintering under the weight of her frantic hands. Ella braced herself, catching her breath as she felt a hard surface beneath her fingers, her only anchor. "Ella!" The voice was etched in sorrow, warping her name into something painful. The whispers swirled around her like the wind in a storm, lashing against her ears with murmurs of betrayal and despair. "Enough!" she screamed, voice trembling with defiance. "I want to be a part of this." And then she felt it, a cold, stiff pull at her feet. Strength fading, she had no energy left to fight. The other children, their faces now visible but twisted in grotesque smiles, slithered over to her, their little hands gripping her ankles with a deathly hold. "Please come with us," they pleaded, eyes wide and empty, glimmering with an unearthly light that threatened to envelop her in warmth, blurring the lines between hope and sorrow for a fleeting moment. A voice of reason echoed in her mind. If they were trapped, maybe they were here because they couldn't move on, maybe she could help them. But at what cost? "Ben!" she yelled again, desperation surging through her veins. And just like that, the whispers turned into a hard, malicious laughter that hung in the air, mocking her. "Your brother is lost, dear girl, join us, and you can find him." Darkness curled in around her, tightening like a noose. Ella fought against the rising tide of hopelessness. She couldn't abandon Ben. He was still out there. She had to believe that, even in this hellish twisted reality. Ella's gaze locked onto the remains of the old lamp, still flickering faintly as if that little light was a beacon amidst the encroaching shadows. She lunged toward it, feeling something shift in the air, a disturbance in the dark. The shadows let out a furious hiss, their hands clawing at her as she reached for the lamp. It might be her only chance. With a final tug, she yanked the lamp closer, and in that second, a tiny flame ignited. The immediate brightness forced back the darkness. The shadow screamed, writhing away from the light as if it burned. "Ben!" she sobbed, the flame illuminating the room in stark clarity. Her brother was still there if she just showed him the way. Just beyond the light, she saw him, fear etched deep within his small frame. He was starting to retreat, heart crumpling as the shadows roared in protest. "Ella! Don't leave me! Ben!" She reached out toward him, the blazing light shining brighter with every ounce of emotion that burst from her hardened heart, but the shadows flared back, dark tendrils reaching for the boy, entwining around him like serpents, pulling him away. "If she escapes, you will be ours forever!" A shrill voice screeched, growing fainter as it was swallowed by the light. Ella felt a powerful force behind her, something primal and ancient. She could stay. Fight them. But her brother. What if she made it brighter? What if it consumed her entirely? Drawing on all her strength, she raised the lamp even higher, willing it to burn brighter than the darkness that surrounded them. Echoes of laughter danced behind her, mixing with the terror and longing, blending into a horrific symphony that threatened to drown her. The lamp flickered again, the flame wavered, and in that heartbeat, she realized she had a choice. And then the shadows lunged. Would she give in and sacrifice her freedom to save Ben? Or would the darkness claim them both? In that moment, as the shadows struck, Ella understood one horrifying truth: sometimes choices are made for you, but you can never escape the consequences. And yet, as darkness surged, she knew the battle was just beginning. What would happen when the light finally extinguished? Would the shadows be her only companions? A piercing shriek tore through the air, splintering the dark silence like shattering glass. The shadows recoiled a fraction at the sound, as if even they feared the anguish it carried. Ella's heart thundered in her chest. She felt hot tears streaking down her cheeks, mingling with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Ben!" she cried again, desperately clutching the frail lamp. The tangible grip was slipping in the chaos of fear surrounding her. The flickering light ebbed and flowed like a dying heartbeat, each pulse a reminder of the shrinking hope. The shadows hissed, a chorus of whispers weaving a web of terror around her. Join us, they coaxed, their voices an eerie melody of seduction and despair. If she didn't act now, she feared their dark invitation would become her own. "Stay back!" she shouted, brandishing the lamp like a sword, even as her hands shook. But it was only a momentary reprieve. The shadows recoiled, but could they be warded off forever? Ahead, Ben was trapped, his tiny form caught in an unyielding grip of shadow tendrils. They tightened around him, knotting like vine roots strangling his tender spirit. His terrified eyes, glistening with unshed tears, met hers, and she saw herself reflected back, lost, terrified, but still resolute. Ella took a step forward, the light slipping dangerously low, her resolve flickering with it. "Ben! Trust me. Just hold on," he whimpered, his voice breaking. "Ella, please. I'm scared." The shadows seethed, and for a moment, they began to merge together, forming a monstrous figure, tall and terrifying. Its eyes glinted crimson, hunger palpable in the air as it towered over them. "You can't save him. You can only save yourself." But her brother, her Ben, was worth every ounce of bravery she had left. With sheer will, she thrust the lamp forward, the light blossoming like a wildfire igniting. Bright and blinding, it seared the shadows, causing them to recoil and retreat. She felt their rage swelling around them, thick as smoke, but the flames surged higher, burning brighter and thicker. "Get away from him!" she screamed, wielding her light like a shield. Ella's breath thrummed loudly in her ears, drowning out the monstrous hisses and whispers, lulling her into submission. She was losing him. The shadows fought harder, and the once innocent faces of the children twisted into grim expressions, eyes turning to voids of sorrowful longing, begging for her surrender. A quick glance back showed her Ben, eyes pleading, clinging to the flickering edge of hope. "Ella, please don't let them take me." Ella felt her heart tear. She couldn't let go. Spurred by desperation, she willed herself to move, pushing forward through the gathering darkness, ready to fight what felt like an eternity of dread. "Ben! Just a little closer." Suddenly, the lamp sputtered violently as shadows lashed out at its warm glow, the silence thickening with each passing second. In that moment of chaos, Ella stumbled, losing her grip on the lamp. It wobbled ominously before smacking against the floor, the light flickering dangerously low, pulsing like a heartbeat on the verge of dying out. "No! No!" she cried, lunging for it, fear slamming into her gut. The horror swelled around them, darkness eclipsing the light. Fingers of shadows edged closer, their grips tightening. And then, in a heart-stopping moment, the lamp flickered and blinked, illuminating something unspeakable in the distance. Something that made her blood run cold. Caught between shadows reaching for her and the glimmer of hope in her brother's eyes, she gasped. The figure looming just beyond the edges of their light was more than a mere horror, it was a remnant of lost souls, carrying forward the weight of despair and longing. "Ella," it murmured, its voice singing with dead echoes. "Will you join them?" A chill crawled down her spine. She felt the shadows close in, the air thickening, oppressing her breath. No. Ella couldn't decide to become just another legend lost in this cursed darkness. She could either find a way to save Ben or lose everything. "Ben! Hold on!" she shrieked, gathering the last of her strength. But as the lamp flickered desperately amid a swirl of dark, she knew one truth: it wouldn't be enough. In the looming silence, just before the light extinguished completely, she realized they weren't just fighting for survival. They were battling to escape a nightmare that would linger long after the darkness had claimed them. The shadows clamored, their sinister song pulsing, as a new wave of horror swept through her. Ella closed her eyes, preparing for the worst. Then it happened. The lamp flickered one final time, and she heard Ben's terrified scream echo in her mind, pulling her back into the depth of despair. Ben! But would she be able to save him, or would the shadows take them both? As the last glimmer of light dimmed, the darkness closed in around them, and in that moment of utter despair, Ella felt a sudden surge of inevitability. Something inside her was awakening, something she never knew existed. What truth or terror awaited in the void? Would she dare to face it, or would choked breaths in the dark be their last sound? The crashing darkness felt alive, pulsating like a growling beast waiting for its moment to pounce. Ella's mind raced, a tangle of frantic thoughts and paralyzing fear. Panic thrummed through her veins as reality twisted around her like a vice, constricting, suffocating. "Ben!" she cried, but the sound barely escaped her lips, drowned by the siren song of shadows creeping closer. They danced around the edges of her vision, whispering promises of surrender. She could hear their deceitful lullabies, calling her, urging her to abandon her fight. But she wouldn't. Ella clutched the lamp, its warm glow fading, flickering like their dwindling hope. The shrill echoes of her brother's fear fueled her, igniting a stubborn spark deep within. She wasn't ready to give in. "Stay with me, please." Ben's sobs echoed through the void. I can't hold on much longer." In that moment of desperation, she felt it, the awakening inside her, strong and undeniable. It surged through her limbs, igniting her spirit with a blaze of defiance. "Get away from him!" Ella threw herself forward, and in an instant, the shadows recoiled as if struck. A surge of strength enveloped her, spilling from her heart like molten gold. She raised the lamp high, and as its light shot forth, striking true against the darkness, the howling shadows shrieked a sound that resonated with pure, unbridled terror. But in the fray, she saw the figure again. "Join us," it whispered, calling like a siren from the depths of hell. Its eyes blazed, drawing her in, weaving intricate tendrils of despair. It offered her an escape, a release from the pain, but the price was steep. "No!" she shouted, and her voice cut through the darkness like a knife. As she fended off the darkest pull, the monstrous figure morphed. For a heartbeat, it resembled her mother, her sweet, laughing mother, before twisting back into its horrific shape. Every gruesome detail carved into its surface fed off her memories, turning them bitter and tainted. "Your fears are my power," it hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "Feed me with your agony, and I will grant you peace." Ella turned away, wicked tears streaming down her cheeks. She would not allow it. "You can't take him," she shouted, resolute. But with every moment, Ben's cries grew weaker, swallowed by the clamor of grief. She needed to act fast. Squeezing her eyes shut, she gathered the flickering essence of hope left inside her and poured it into the lamp, calling upon whatever strength she had. In response, the shadows writhed like frantic serpents,
the light expanding and consuming the inky darkness.
The tendrils around Ben's small form loosened incrementally, his spirit flickering with surge after surge of warmth.
Ella!
His expression was a mix of fear and exhilaration.
Just a little longer.
And then, the whispering shadows stilled for a moment, clamoring to reconstruct themselves. In the thinning dark, a harsh reality unfolded, revealing the grim faces of others' lost children, mothers, fathers caught in the abyss, begging for release but forever entangled in the grasp of despair.
"Help us too!"
they cried in unison, their voices merging into one haunting melody, filling the chamber with sorrow.
Ella staggered backward, the weight of grief pressing down on her. "I need to save my brother."
The figure loomed, its patience gone.
"You will be just like them. Join us now, or watch him perish." The room shook, shadows vibrating like a symphony of anguish. Ella fought to maintain focus, the power of the lamp flickering dangerously low. She had only one chance. "Ben!"
she screamed, summoning every ounce of force.
One final burst of will. "Hold on. Please."
In that instant, a blinding flash erupting from the lamp burst forth like a star being born, illuminating the nightmare in all its horror. Every anguished visage, every empty soul echoed back at her, then vanished, swallowed into the radiant light. But then something unexpected happened. The monsters began to scream, twisting back and forth in agony. The light poured into the shadows, and in their pain, Ella felt a tremor of fear. Was it truly over, or merely the birth of something else? As the shadows pulled back, a new silence swept through the room, thick as fog.
Breathless, Ella looked around. Had she succeeded or simply opened a new door to terror? Where was Ben?
Then, the shadows surged forward, and she heard it, an all too familiar voice, thin and trembling.
"Ella, help me!" It was a sound that would haunt her forever. In the overwhelming silence, one question loomed large: how far would she go to save what mattered most, and what sinister truth awaited her in this twisted realm?
Ella's heart thundered in her chest as she spun around, desperately trying to pinpoint the source of Ben's voice. The lamp, still trembling in her grip, became an anchor in this sea of lurking dread, its fragile light flickering under the weight of overwhelming shadows.
"Ben!"
she cried again, her throat raw.
"Where are you?"
Over here. The voice was faint now, a ghost of what it once was. It echoed off the walls, twisting and turning like a cruel game. The darkness seemed to mock her, stretching the sound into a whimsical tune, pinching her resolve. With every step she took, the shadows shifted, as if alive and responding to her movement, thrumming with anticipation. She could feel their chill biting at her skin, a warning that danger was near. Ella, the whisper grew louder, and a glimpse of something darted just beyond the reach of light.
Her breath caught.
"Help me please!" Her feet moved almost without her will, drawn towards the faint plea, but the shadows roared around her, clawing at her mind, feeding on her fears. Each tendril crept closer, lacing around her ankles, making it harder to escape. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing, suffocating. She raised the lamp higher, its light quivering but fighting to shine.
"Ben!"
Ella shouted again, panic slicing through her voice, propelling her onward. The need to find him engulfed her completely. Suddenly, she stumbled into a clearing, the shadows more subdued here. Before her stood a figure, shrouded in the remnants of darkness. It was no longer twisted, it resembled Ben, but something was off. The familiar features were distorted, twisted in anguish.
"Ella!" the figure croaked, but the voice was not Ben's.
It was deeper, throaty, dripping with malice. "You sought to save your brother from despair, but perhaps he has already lost." Her pulse racing, she squinted through the dim light.
She could see faces, trapped, flickering in and out of the edges of her vision. Friends, family, even faces she didn't recognize.
Their eyes were hollow, crying silently for help they would never receive.
"No!" she gasped, trembling. "Stay back!"
But the dark laughter echoed, surrounding her like a nightmare come to life.
"We are all Tarantines now. Your brother needs to join us, just like the rest."
A sacrifice for the peace of the soul. Terror crashed into her like icy waves.
"No! I won't let that happen."
And just like that, the shadows pulled back, coiling in on themselves as if a new storm was brewing. The lamp flickered, nearly extinguished, the light waning in strength. Ella could feel the desperation oozing from the walls, like a living entity seeped into the very fabric of this place. "Ella, please," the voice cried again, echoing within her, breaking through the chaos. "Make a choice." Ella stood frozen, caught between the desperate plea of her brother and the sinister lure of the darkness. It promised peace, an end to suffering, but she understood now the true cost. "Join us, and no true freedom, or cling to your fragile hopes," the phantom figure taunted. It shifted, morphing into images of her past, a cruel parade of failures, fears, and regrets, all blended into a grotesque tapestry of shame. The memories invaded her mind. "You can't take him!" she screamed, her voice a raw plea against the creeping tide. But the shadows surged forward again, ravenous, closing in around her. The walls began to close together, and the weight of despair pressed heavily on her chest. Ella Ben's voice was a whisper now. "Don't leave me in the depths of the shadowy chaos," the truth flickered abruptly in her mind. What if saving Ben meant making an irreversible choice? One that could tether her to the sinister realm forever? The light from her lamp flickered one last time, catching the fleeting shadows off guard. It surged with a final spark. Was this her victory or her doom? With a deep breath, she steadied herself for whatever was to come, ready to confront the darkness. "Show me!" she shouted, her voice rising against the din. "Show me what I must do." And then, everything went dark. Despite it all, one question loomed, hanging in the suffocating silence: what path would she choose, and what deep horrors could lie in wait to tip the scales of fate? The darkness enveloped Ella entirely, crushing around her like a vice. A chilling silence fell, thick like a fog, and fear twisted in her gut as she struggled to grasp the truth hidden in this realm of shadows. The last flicker of light from the lamp vanished, leaving her in utter blackness, drowning in despair. But even in this suffocating void, Ella felt a stirring inside, a flicker of defiance against the marrow-deep dread. "Ben!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the emptiness, a desperate plea among echoes that felt ancient. She reached out, feeling nothing but cool air and the crawling fingers of shadows pulling at her very essence, and then she remembered the truth: shadow feeds on fear. With every ounce of willpower, Ella focused on the love she felt for Ben, allowing it to fill her, to roar through her like a raging inferno against the cold. "You cannot take us!" she shouted into the abyss, her voice strong, emboldened by resolve. "We will not be your prisoners." Suddenly, she felt a change in the air around her, a shift that sparked the darkness into something more chaotic. The presence swelled, shadows swirling faster, intertwining like thorny vines. "Join us!" they hissed, their voices layered thick with temptation, echoing the lust for power that fueled their existence. But Ella held fast, standing still against the tide. "I choose love over despair," she declared. "I will fight." With those words, energy surged through her, light sparked back to life in bursts, igniting the lamp like a shooting star. The shadows shrieked and recoiled, howling at the light that threatened to expose them. She raised the lamp high, illuminating the faces of the lost children that lingered in the corners, their eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and hungry longing. "Stay back from him," she cried, and with every flick of her wrist, the shadows struggled, shrinking back. The figures twisted in agony, their faces slipping between anguish and hope. For a heartbeat, she could see them, trapped but yearning for release. "I will save him," she shouted, her voice like a clarion call ringing above the chaos. "You will not save anyone but yourself." The figure loomed larger, its features fluttering like disturbed smoke. "Yet your sacrifice could be what we need." Ella felt the pull, the sick tug of temptation that resonated through every shadow, clawing for her soul. But as she stood firm, she remembered Ben and the warmth of his laughter, bright against the bleak. "Ben," she shouted again, desperation fueling her fury, "hold on, I'm coming." The lamp blazed bright, illuminating an image that stopped her breath. Ben stood just beyond the reach of the light, gripping a tangle of shadows that threatened to snatch him away. His small face was pale, eyes wide with terror. "Ella! Don't leave me!" he cried, hands outstretched. The shadows writhed around him, ready to devour him whole, but Ella pushed through, heart roaring, spirit unbreakable. "I'm right here. Just hold on." The light expanded fiercely, bursting forth with radiant energy, illuminating the darkness like a sunrise chasing away the night. "You will not take him," she bellowed, slashing through the gloom with blazing resolve.
You cannot win.
The shadows shrieked in unison, a sound that pierced through the thick air, vibrating with sheer horror. Light danced, pushing the oppressive darkness back with furious energy until slowly, just like the dawn creeping over the horizon, the shadows began to dissipate.
Ben! Come to me!
Ella urged, beckoning him through the swirling darkness. Just as he stumbled forward, the shadows lashed out one last time, desperate to reclaim their lost prey. But Ella swung the lamp, and as the light struck, tendrils of shadow snapped like brittle threads. In a breathless moment, Ben broke free, and as he dashed toward her, their eyes locked, radiating warmth and life that filled the air with palpable hope. Ella knelt as he sprinted into her arms, their embrace solid and true, powerful enough to shatter the lingering shadows around them. They stood together, the lamp glowing fiercely between
them, and as one, they faced the remnants of darkness still clawing at the edges of their reality.
"We will not be part of your darkness," Ella shouted, and with every ounce of love and bravery she possessed, they raised the lamp together. The shadows screamed as light engulfed them, ripping through the last vestiges of despair that lingered like smoke. Then, silence fell, thick and profound yet somehow comforting. They were standing outside the ruins of the cursed school, the sun breaking through the edges of the horizons, painting the sky in brilliant hues. The darkness had retreated, and in its place was a quiet calm that felt like liberation. Ella hugged Ben tight, feeling the warmth of his little body, the sound of his heartbeat matching her own. They were free. "And we can go home," Ella murmured, brushing the hair back from his face, tears of relief streaking down her cheeks. Together, they walked away from the haunted remnants of the school, leaving behind the shadows of the past. Ella felt the weight lift from her shoulders as daylight embraced them, sighing with the knowledge that they weren't just survivors, they were victors against the encroaching darkness. The true meaning of love had ignited a fire in her soul, one brighter than the fiercest shadows, lighting their path towards a hopeful tomorrow. Now here's the deal, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, it seriously makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is crucial.